A reading from the Acts of the Apostles. The community of believers was of one heart and mind, and no one claimed that any of his possessions was his own, but they had everything in common. With great power, the apostles bore witness to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great favor was accorded them all. There was no needy person among them, for those who owned property or houses would sell them, bring the proceeds of the sale, and put them at the feet of the apostles, and they were distributed to each according to need. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So here we are. It's 1 week out from Easter, still in the octave, and already in this reading from the lectionary, the church is asking us, so what? What now? Christ has risen from the dead, but how do we respond? In this passage, I think we get a little peek at how the first disciples responded, and an invitation to do likewise. This passage really serves as a summary statement within the Acts of the Apostles. What I mean is that it tries to bring together some of the things that have happened in the narrative so far, to point out themes, and to point forward to what's going to come next. And above all, what it's stressing is that the early church was united. Listen to some of what it says. The apostles, the believers, were of one heart and mind. They had everything in common. They would bring the proceeds of sale and share it with the whole community. But above all, they preached the resurrection as a community. Preaching, this bearing witness to the resurrection of Christ, is at the heart of this passage. It begins, as we read, by talking about the unity of the believers. They were of one heart and mind. They shared their goods. It ends by explaining how they shared their goods. But in the middle, we hear, with great power, the apostles bore witness to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great favor was accorded them all. This witness was the key theme of the apostles' community, of the early church. It's what brought them together. It's what united them. It's why they shared their goods. The whole passage is about this witness to the resurrection, because this early church recognized that the resurrection isn't just one more event. It's not just something that happened that we can move on from, but it's the decisive event, that it demands a response. Their response was to live in common. And in the Acts of the Apostles following this statement, we get two examples of how different believers, how different members of the community responded to this. First, we hear the story of Barnabas. This is his first appearance in the Acts. Barnabas, all we're told, is had some property, he sold it, and he placed it at the feet of the apostles. Basically, he saw a need in the community. He saw that he could do something to answer that need, and he gave what he had to the community. He gave himself totally in generosity for the community's sake. Following Barnabas, though, we get the story of Ananias and Sapphira, a couple who decided they weren't going to give everything. The story's familiar to most, I'm sure, but a brief recap would be that Ananias and Sapphira were members of the community, and they had some property, and they did sell it, and they did give a good chunk of the proceeds to Peter. But they didn't give everything. They held something back for themselves. And even worse, when Peter challenged them about it, they lied to him. They said, no, this is everything. We don't have anything else. And the reading, the Acts of the Apostles, doesn't get into why they did it. Maybe they were disappointed with Peter's leadership, thought that he could have done things differently. Maybe they were worried that the community wasn't going to take care of them, that they needed to hold on to something for their own security. Maybe they were just greedy. We don't know, but we do know that they lied about this holding back, and then when they were challenged on it, it led to their being separated from the community, it led to their death. So we have two different responses. Barnabas, who gives himself generously, Ananias and Sapphira, who hold back. I think when we hear this passage read about the early church, it can sound very idealized, right? The community of believers was of one heart and mind. Does that sound like the church today? I think sometimes it doesn't even sound like our priory today. And in a situation like that, I think it's really easy to rationalize a response like Ananias and Sapphira's, to say, I'm going to hold back a little bit. This community is too divided. We're not sure where we're going. We're not sure what to do. I think it'd be best to just wait it out. Hold back. Maybe I'll contribute something, but I'm not going to give it my all. Instead, I think we're called to the example of Barnabas, who heard the good news of Christ from the apostles and who responded by giving generously of everything that he had, holding nothing back. For indeed, my brothers, it's true, Christ is risen from the dead. But how do I respond?